Good morning. Today, we're bringing you a story that's making waves across the nation and stirring up conversations in households, workplaces, and the halls of government alike. President Trump has unveiled a bold new promise from the White House, a plan to deliver a $2,000 dividend to every eligible American family. This proposal is being called the American dividend, and it's quickly becoming one of the most talked about ideas in recent memory. But make no mistake, this isn't your typical stimulus check like those we saw during the pandemic. Instead, it's a new approach that aims to put money directly into the hands of Americans, but with a twist. The funding for this ambitious plan would come from a special tax on foreign goods sold in the United States. In other words, it's a tariff-driven dividend, with the government collecting extra revenue from imported products and then redistributing it to American families. The goal? To reward American citizens, boost consumer spending, and strengthen the economy, all while using the money generated from these new tariffs. Supporters say it's a way to put America first and help families cope with rising prices. This plan is part of Trump's broader economic strategy, building on his Liberation Day policy that expanded tariffs on goods from around the world. It's a move designed to reshape global trade and bring more benefits back home. For many families feeling the pinch of inflation and higher costs of living, the promise of a $2,000 check is powerful. It could mean catching up on bills, paying down debt, or simply having a little breathing room in the monthly budget. But as with any major proposal, there are important questions that need answers. Who exactly will be eligible for this dividend? Will it go to every citizen, or only to certain income groups or families with children? And how will the money actually be distributed? Will it arrive as a direct deposit, a physical check in the mail, or through some other system? The logistics are still being worked out. There's also debate about the true impact of this plan. Is it genuinely beneficial for the average American, or could there be hidden costs, like higher prices on imported goods or unintended consequences for small businesses? Economists, lawmakers, and even the Supreme Court are all weighing in on this complex issue. Some see it as a creative solution, while others warn of potential legal and economic challenges ahead. The idea of a $2,000 check is certainly appealing, but the story behind it is layered and complicated. As the debate unfolds, it's crucial for every American to stay informed and understand what's at stake for their families and the country. Stay tuned as we break down the details, explore the pros and cons, and follow the national conversation about this bold and controversial proposal. Let's break down the key ingredient in this plan, the tariff. Tariffs are a hot topic in the news, but what do they really mean for everyday people, businesses, and the economy as a whole? To understand tariffs, we need to look at how they work, why governments use them, and what impact they have on the products we buy. A tariff is essentially a tax placed on goods that are brought into a country from abroad. Think of it as a fee that must be paid before a foreign product can enter the U.S. market and be sold to American consumers. This fee is collected by the government at the border, and it applies to a wide range of products, from electronics to clothing to food. For example, imagine you want to buy a television that costs $300. If the government sets a 10% tariff on imported TVs, the price jumps to $330. That extra $30 doesn't go to the store or the manufacturer. It goes straight to the U.S. government as revenue. Tariffs serve two main purposes. They raise money for the government, and they make imported goods more expensive compared to products made in the U.S. This price difference encourages shoppers to choose American-made items, supporting local businesses and industries. By making foreign goods pricier, tariffs can help protect jobs in American factories and manufacturing plants. When domestic companies face less competition from cheaper imports, they may be able to hire more workers and keep existing jobs secure. To picture this, imagine a small neighborhood bakery trying to compete with a massive industrial bakery from overseas. Without tariffs, the big factory might flood the market with cheap pies, making it hard for the local shop to survive. If the government adds a special pie tax to the imported factory pies, suddenly the local bakery's pies become more appealing to customers, helping the small business stay afloat. On a global scale, tariffs work in much the same way. They give domestic industries a competitive edge by leveling the playing field against international companies that might otherwise dominate the market with lower prices. But tariffs are controversial. The big debate is about who actually pays for them. Do foreign companies absorb the cost, or do American businesses and shoppers end up footing the bill? In reality, companies often pass the extra cost along to consumers by raising prices on imported goods. This means that, at the end of the day, American families might pay more at the store. So, are tariffs really a tax on foreign countries, or are they a hidden tax on American shoppers? This is a question that economists, politicians, and everyday people continue to debate. Understanding how tariffs work and who they affect is key to making sense of the bigger economic picture and the strategies behind trade policy. By learning about tariffs, you'll be better equipped to understand the choices governments make and how those choices impact your wallet and the world economy. Let's dive into President Trump's dividend proposal specifics. The promise is a $2,000 payment for eligible Americans, targeting working and middle-class families. The funding comes from tariffs on imported goods, projected to generate billions annually. The vision is to redistribute this revenue directly to Americans, sharing the financial rewards of a tough trade policy. However, the form of the dividend is still unclear. It might not be a direct check. Treasury Secretary Bessent suggested it could be delivered through tax cuts or other means. A direct payment would likely require congressional approval, a significant political hurdle. The promise is clear, but the mechanism for delivering the money is still a work in progress. Many details remain to be finalized. Supporters of Trump's tariff strategy see it as a tool for rebalancing global trade and prioritizing American interests. They argue tariffs encourage companies to bring jobs back to the U.S., revitalizing communities hit by globalization. The $2,000 dividend is seen as proof that this strategy benefits ordinary people. Trump insists tariffs aren't a tax on citizens, but a net gain for the country. Proponents believe tariffs give the U.S. leverage in international negotiations, leveling the playing field. The revenue can tackle domestic issues like national debt, while funding the dividend without raising income taxes. The dividend symbolizes a new era of economic nationalism, prioritizing American workers and industries. Critics argue that tariffs, while often promoted as a way to protect American industries, actually end up harming the very people they're supposed to help. Instead of shielding workers and families, tariffs function much like a hidden tax on American consumers, quietly raising the cost of everyday goods. When companies import goods from abroad, they're the ones who pay the tariff up front. But in reality, these businesses usually pass those extra costs directly to consumers, resulting in higher prices at the checkout counter for everything from electronics to groceries. This ripple effect doesn't stop at the store. As costs rise, manufacturers may be forced to cut expenses elsewhere, sometimes by reducing their workforce or slowing production. This can lead to layoffs, job insecurity, and a less stable economy overall. On the global stage, other countries often retaliate with tariffs of their own, sparking trade wars that can further damage U.S. exports and threaten American jobs in industries that rely on selling goods overseas. Many financial experts and business leaders remain skeptical of the so-called dividend that's promised to offset these costs. They argue it's simply a way to disguise the true economic impact of tariffs. For families already struggling to make ends meet, a $2,000 check from the government may sound helpful, but critics say it doesn't truly compensate for the higher prices they're forced to pay on countless products. The process is often described as the government taking money from Americans through inflated prices, then returning only a portion of it in the form of a dividend, leaving households to shoulder the difference. Critics call this an economic sleight of hand, a distraction from the real financial burden that tariffs place on ordinary families, who see their budgets stretched thinner each month. The debate rages on, with some insisting tariffs are a necessary tool for economic strength, while others warn they're a costly gamble that risks long-term prosperity. As this policy continues to unfold, understanding both sides of the argument is more important than ever for American voters, businesses, and families alike. Ultimately, the true impact of tariffs on American wallets remains a deeply contentious and personal issue for millions across the country. The legality of Trump's tariff strategy faces a critical test in the Supreme Court. A coalition argues the president overstepped his authority, using tariffs as a revenue tool without Congress. The challenge questions if tariffs are a legitimate national security tool or an unconstitutional tax. The Constitution gives Congress the power to tax, and challengers argue Trump bypassed this. Justices have expressed skepticism about the administration's position. A ruling against Trump could devastate his economic agenda, forcing refunds of collected tariffs. This would eliminate funding for the $2,000 dividend and create a financial liability for the Treasury. Trump remains defiant, warning a ruling against him would be devastating. The legal battle adds uncertainty to the dividend proposal. The Supreme Court's decision will be pivotal in determining the plan's future. Beyond debates, a practical question remains: do the numbers work? The administration projects tariffs will generate $400 billion annually. However, paying a $2,000 dividend to 150 million adults would cost nearly $300 billion yearly. This would consume most of the tariff revenue, leaving little for debt reduction. Tax experts warn the gross revenue figure is misleading, with tariffs reducing tax revenue elsewhere. For every dollar of tariff revenue, the net gain is only about 24 cents. This changes the calculation dramatically, with $300 billion in gross revenue, translating to $72 billion in usable funds. This gap raises questions about the dividend plan's financial sustainability. Critics argue the plan isn't viable based on tariffs' real-world impact. With economic debates, legal challenges, and fuzzy math, what's next for the $2,000 dividend? The Supreme Court decision is a major hurdle, determining the plan's legal viability. A ruling for the administration clears a path for funding, while a ruling against could collapse the proposal. Trump hints at a backup plan, but details are unclear. Even if the plan survives, implementation challenges remain, requiring congressional approval. The future of the dividend depends on legal rulings, political negotiations, and economic realities. The promise resonates with many Americans, but turning it into reality requires navigating obstacles. The coming months will be critical in determining if this bold idea becomes policy or fades away. What does this mean for your budget? It depends on which side you believe. If you trust the administration, the dividend is a financial win, offsetting small price increases. Critics argue it's a partial refund for higher prices, potentially leaving you with less money. Your eligibility and spending habits will impact the dividend's effect on your wallet. If you buy many imported goods, you'll feel tariff-driven price increases more. If you work in export-dependent industries, your job could be at risk from retaliatory tariffs. The dividend forces Americans to consider if it's a strategy for strength or a risky gamble. The debate continues, with global trade now central to your financial future.